Well, welcome, guys. Welcome to our Joomlashack user group. About 3 months ago now, it feels like a lifetime, maybe 10 weeks ago, we ran right into the teeth of the pandemic when it came to business, and everyone was starting to try and figure out what they were going to do when everything was changing around them. And one of the things that we decided to do as a company, as Joomlashack, was to just try and make ourselves as useful as possible. I think there was a point when the pandemic first hit, when our inboxes started to fill up with email newsletters from companies saying, in these unprecedented times, we are trying to adjust to the new normal. We are here to help you stay safe. And you would read these emails and they would not really say anything of any substance. And it seemed like an excuse to basically spam your inbox. You were getting emails from some company you had not heard of for 10 years who happened to have your email and wanted an excuse to land in your inbox. And we really didn't want to take that approach at Joomlashack. So what we decided to do was basically go back into our own toolbox and try and release as much useful stuff as possible. So when the pandemic first hit, we had a team meeting and we said, what is really, really useful that we use every day? What are the tools that we can release for our customers? And we ended up releasing 5 extensions so far. And these are things that we use and rely on really heavily. And so in this session, I'm going to take you guys through those 5 different extensions that we've released. And so it's technically a recap of what we've done here at Joomlashack in 2020. And it's going to cover those 5 extensions. And Bill, you are, well, do you mind introducing yourself?
I feel like the old codger everywhere I go, because most people in this business are probably in their 30s or 40s, and actually this fall is a red letter fall for me because it'll be the 50th anniversary of the first computer program I ever wrote.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What language was it in?
Fortran.
Okay.
So I've been flipping and flopping between computers and music ever since I can remember now. And I still play music professionally, but I also have this wonderful job working for Steve. And I just, I've been here for 8 years now, going on 8 years.
Yeah, so you're based in Portland, Oregon, and
right.
You're the lead developer at Joomlashack and also a very talented musician on the weekends, at least before and hopefully after the pandemic. Yeah.
Right.
Cool. And Bill, you took the lead in a major update that we released this week, which I guess was probably we were probably going to do anyway, but we really accelerated as a response to the pandemic. And we saw pretty quickly that the businesses that were most comfortable, the businesses that were doing best, were those with strong subscription recurring revenues to them. And so we have an extension called Simple Renew, which has been around for well, when did you first develop Simple Renew, Bill? Must have been 6-7 years ago at least.
Yeah, it was I'm trying to remember because I wrote OS Campus. I think I did Simple Renew first, and so that was like one of the first. This is one of the first extensions I wrote, specifically for Joomlashack. And I'm 2014 is sticking in my head.
So Simple Renew is basically an e-commerce extension which we have been running internally for many years. It powers our subscription business. And so one of the first things we thought was, in terms of producing useful tools for people, what would be really useful is a subscription extension which is simple and reliable. And so we've been eating our own dog food on this. We've been using Simple Renew for at least 6 years now. And if you go into the Joomlashack admin area, you'll see Simple Renew here. It powers everything we do in our business. And so, Bill, you've been working on a new and improved version of Simple Renew that's out now. What's changed?
Well, we started off when I first started working for Joomlashack. We had this previous extension that was specifically designed to talk to Recurly, the Recurly subscription system, and it had some serious problems, and which is why we decided to just start from scratch. So Simple Renew, I designed it from the beginning with the idea that we would maybe connect to other payment gateways, other subscription gateways. But it was initially designed against the Recurly system. So we've been talking about it for years, and finally had the opportunity to now integrate Stripe into it. And we do intend at some point to add additional payment gateways. PayPal is next on our list.
I guess we chose Stripe initially because it's very, very reliable. We've used PayPal for subscriptions on and off for 10 years or so, and it's terrible. I think is the right word.
Let me just say that every developer I've ever talked to who's tried to integrate with PayPal has described their loathing for it.
It's not just bad for developers, but I think it's particularly bad when it comes to subscriptions. And we've learned that the hard way from experience over the years. And so I think the same is true with quite a few payment gateways, that a lot of payment gateways are set up to do one-off subscriptions or one-off purchases successfully, but only one or two gateways actively specialize in being really good at handling and managing subscriptions. And Stripe is one of those. So that's why Stripe is the first gateway we have available here. So, Bill, if someone wants to get up and running with a subscription business in Joomla and they choose Simple Renew here, what's the information that they need to get up and running with?
Well, they have to get a Stripe account. I've been testing on a test sandbox Stripe account, and then install Simple Renew. And as you can see on the screen, just enter the two keys that you can get from your Stripe dashboard and start creating some plans, and you're ready to go.
Okay, and the way that we've focused with Simple Renew is to use the Joomla core as much as possible, right? That it's all based around adding or removing people from Joomla user groups?
Right. Basically, all Simple Renew does is add or remove people from a particular user group based on their subscription status.
So in this particular case, we've set up a subscription where people can be automatically added to an author group if they join this subscription plan, and it's going to cost them $99 for the year. And we've chosen that approach, I think, because we've tried other subscription extensions which try and manage the access with their own access levels. And to be honest, Joomla's access levels can be complex enough by themselves without adding extra layers of complexity. And so Simple Renew is aimed to be as simple and straightforward as possible, sticking to the Joomla core. Bill, are there any features of Simple Renew that we can't see here? There are some things that you can do, such as create coupons.
Right. Coupons need to be created at the gateway right now. Although that's one of the things that I'm looking at adding to the Simple Renew interface, where we can manage coupons from here. Right now, all you can really do is manage plans from here.
Okay, so it's really not very complicated in terms of the interface. You've been working on the technical side of it for several months now, but it is designed to be a simple and reliable subscription gateway. And I think one of the things we'll be talking about at Joomlashack over the next few months is helping people build up a reliable subscription-based portion of their business, trying to move as many of their customers as possible to recurring income.
Yeah, and I believe our approach with Simple Renew, I remember when I first came on, Steve, you were constantly preaching the gospel of simplicity, and I'm a big fan. The less the user has to worry about, or an administrator has to worry about, the easier it is for them to get the job done. And I think using the Joomla ACL was part of that decision. We don't have to reproduce a whole access system when we can just use what's already there.
Cool, that's the goal, to make it as simple as possible. And so the first of the 5 extensions that I'm going to talk about today is Simple Renew, and that is in a beta version now. But in the next 2-3 weeks, it will go stable once Bill has the final touches to it. So
few little tweaks.
Yeah, the final polish. And so the next one is one that has been kicking around for a long time in Joomla now. This one is based on a Joomla 1.5 extension. And what it is an extension called Shack Article Manager, and it works on the front end of your Joomla site. And it basically removes the need for your users to have admin access to write articles on your Joomla site. I think it was called User Article Manager in Joomla 1.5. And when we were starting to grow Joomlashack, we put out a question to people. What is the old abandoned extension, or the extension which is no longer being supported, that you would most like to see us take on and keep updated? And this extension was the winner. Basically, you can give your users access to visit this extension from the front end of your site, and they can see all of the content that they have written. They can edit the content directly from the front end of their site. And they can also create new articles in here as well. And so if you do have users who are creating content on your site, but you don't want to allow them into the Joomla admin area, then Shack Article Manager is a pretty good option here. It does cover just about anything you can do on the admin area of a Joomla site. You have all of the same publishing options. It's multilingual, and you have your normal SEO options as well. And in the admin area, you have quite a lot of control over exactly what people see when they log in to create articles on your site. For example, you can decide to force people to submit content to just one category on your site. You can customize the way these new articles appear. You can customize what they see on the main front end interface that we just saw. And so you have a front end layout available for your users, which is hopefully easier than giving them access to the Joomla admin, and is also more customizable as well. For example, if you have a single category that you want to accept all your user submitted content into, you can choose that category, and on the front end, the users will not have any choice. Okay, I have my new article here, and in this case, it's been published automatically. I'm logged in as an administrator. However, if I log in as a lower level user, I have a user called John here, and John is not an administrator. If they log in, they will only see the articles they've created. They won't have access to anyone else's articles. And if they create content in the admin area here, it's not going to be published. They are not going to have publishing rights. If you go to the Joomla admin area as an administrator, you will see the article there waiting for moderation. You can log in, make some changes if you want to. Or if you don't want to go into the Joomla admin, you can moderate those articles from the front end as well. And so this is the second of the extensions that we've released this year. That one is Shack Article Manager, and it was previously known as User Article Manager for those of you guys who have been around for the Joomla 1.5 days. Okay, so we have Simple Renew for extensions. We have Shack Article Manager for the front-end management of articles. And the next one I'm going to talk about is one that we rely on really heavily at Joomlashack. I talked about emptying our toolbox of the things that are useful to us. Over here at Joomlashack, we have a lot of users who are logging in and out all the time. And it's not unusual for them to report a problem on the site. They will come to us and say, "Oh, Steve, Bill, I've logged into Joomlashack and feature X or download Y isn't working correctly. How can I fix this on my site?" And we have been using an extension called user switching, which basically allows us to log in and pretend to be that user. And so I hope I'm not giving any security hints away here. I don't think I am. But if any of you guys on the call are Joomlashack members and you have a problem, what we can do is use this to log in and mimic your account. So on this site, I'm logged in as Steve. We also have a user called John. if I have this Shack user switching extension, all I need to do is enter my super user password and their username, and I'm logged in as John. And I can browse around and see exactly what John sees. And to be honest, this is probably the number one extension we use inside Joomlashack support to try and debug issues. It's not unusual for edge cases to happen, people to say, oh, I'm using Internet Explorer 10 or I'm using Firefox on a Linux machine. And the easiest way to replicate that is to fire up their account using this Shack user switching extension and log in and browse around and try and see exactly what they see. So in the admin area, there are some security restrictions here. You can block people by their IP address. So if we wanted to, we could make this pretty secure by saying, I'm going to put Bill's IP address in here, and I'm going to put my IP address in here. And so the only people that can do the user switching are Bill and myself. And it's also possible to determine which user groups are allowed to do the switching. This is live on Joomlashack, and only super users are allowed to do this. And you can also choose which user groups can be tested. So you can decide which of your customers' user groups can actually have their accounts switched to. And so this is one of the things that came up when we started talking about the useful tools that we have and that we can give to our customers. What are the really useful tools? What are the really useful features that we use every single day? And Shack user switching is definitely one of those. It's just a little tool that really makes life much easier for us. Okay, so we've talked about Simple Renew, which is a subscription extension. The second one we talked about was Shack Article Manager, which allows you to manage articles from the front end of your site without logging in. We've talked about Shack User Switching, which allows you to test your customers' accounts. And the fourth one I'm going to talk about is really right up Bill's alley as a developer. We have an extension called Shack Error Notify, which, well, Bill, can you talk about what Shack Error Notify does?
Occasionally, problems come up, right? And
more than occasionally, most of the time.
Well, and a user will report that they got one of those dreaded, just white screen of death in Joomla, where an error was thrown, and all they got was, fatal error. Your site's broken. So what we actually based this. Steve was talking about something they have at WordPress that will catch those kinds of errors and send an email. And I thought we should have that. So Shack Error Notify will do what it can to catch those fatal errors that completely shut your site down. Site will still, show the same error, but at least we'll get an email saying, "Hey, something went really wrong." And there's a number of things you can send in that email, and you can decide what to actually catch in terms of errors.
So
there you go.
So the backstory to this is, we have a WordPress plugin business as well. And one Friday night, our checkout was going smoothly, and one or two of the plugins on the WordPress site have a auto update feature, and some developer who is braver than us released a update to their plugin late on Friday night, and it was completely unrelated to the checkout process. And Friday night, it completely broke our checkout process. And Saturday, Sunday, no sales on Monday. We got to Monday afternoon wondering what on earth was happening. And we started to dig back in the error logs and finally found that this extension, and I think it was like a latest news widget maybe for WordPress, had for some reason completely broken our checkout process. And so we went hunting for a way to automatically get notified every time something really serious like that goes wrong on our site. And we found a plugin that did it on WordPress. And it's actually saved us in very similar situations a couple of times now. And so every time there's a fatal error on our WordPress site, we get an email, and we realized that it would be a useful thing to do on the Joomla side as well, because we've had checkup problems with our Joomla site too sometimes. These things happen. And so Bill built Shack Error Notify, which will send us an email every time Joomla produces a fatal error. And you can turn this setting up a little higher, right, Bill, to show more errors if you're feeling brave.
Right. They have to be fatal because on some level it's more complicated in Joomla than it was in WordPress. But the basic idea is instead of just getting one of those fatal errors where you get that screen that says 404 or 403 or bad syntax or something, whatever can bring your site down. Chances are you can get an email for it. And I had to add a bunch of configuration options because it turns out there's a number of little hidden errors that show up. And I tweaked it a bit for Joomlashack. And some of the settings are based on what we had to figure out, to get Joomlashack to not constantly be sending us errors. I think at one point, Steve, we were getting 50 emails an hour or something at one point.
Yeah, it did take some testing to figure out the right level of error reporting to do, so you would only get notified of the really critical errors.
Right. It can catch more than you care to know about.
But touch wood, it's really done a pretty good job of saving us in quite a few situations. I think most recently we had a problem with our support ticket system. We use Help Scout, and we have a connector that talks to Help Scout from the Joomlashack site, and it was broken, and people were having problems logging into it. And it's the kind of thing that we just wouldn't have caught normally because we're not checking our error logs. But Shack Error Notify almost immediately reported the problem to us. And as you can tell from the email records, it told us exactly where the problem was. Here's the line number. Here's the file. Here's what's happening. It told us the user that was happening for, so we contacted the user and talked to them. Really, one of those things that we had been using internally, I'd asked Bill to build it quite some time ago just to make sure that Joomlashack was running smoothly. But when the pandemic came, our thought was, okay, this would be a really useful tool we could distribute to Joomlashack customers.
There have been a number of times where the this extension saved my butt when either there was a coding error or some kind of a problem that showed up, and I got an email message right away, and I could immediately zero in on where the problem was and fix it within minutes, as opposed to, oh, was there a problem?
So it's related to Shack user switching, I think, in that it fills a similar kind of hole. It fixes a similar kind of problem. That with Shack user switching, it works behind the scenes to help you run a site on a day-to-day basis. And the same is true with Shack Error Notify. Both of those are useful site maintenance plugins, basically. So we got a couple of questions in the chat. One from Bjorn was an interesting one about the article manager. And his question was, how is this going to work on Joomla 4 when it comes to workflows? Joomla 4 has a new workflows feature when it comes to allowing content to move through transitions from, say, draft to editor review to approved to maybe waiting legal approval and then finally to published. And Bjorn, that's a good question. I'll be honest, and I suspect Bill will back me up on this, that we have had some bumpy experiences with Joomla releases in the past in terms of jumping on them too early, because things do change. My gut feeling is that we will really start to seriously look at migrating our extensions to Joomla 4 when there's a release candidate available. We are at the end of May now, and we're looking forward to a beta release of Joomla 4 next week, if all goes well. And at that point, we'll probably start doing some installs and kicking the tires on it. But simply from experience, quite a lot will probably change during the beta process. And we will know enough to give some feedback. But when it comes to really preparing our extensions for Joomla 4, that will wait for the release candidate phase, which will hopefully come later this summer. Bill, have you tested any of our extensions on Joomla 4 yet on these early alpha versions?
No.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous about it, frankly, because it does. Well, you know me. I'm Mr. Cautious. I want to have everything ready to go as soon as Joomla 4 comes out, but that's not going to be possible.
Yeah, we've definitely done a lot more work on the template side. I think because they were moving earlier, and also because there was a lot of important discussions going on around Bootstrap and CSS Grid. And our main designer was heavily involved in those discussions, trying to track everything that was going on. And so at the moment, our templates will, I believe, install and work on Joomla 4 already. The extensions are not there yet, and we're not going to get moving on that until Joomla 4 is more stable. And then
it can be really complex.
And then a quick question from Joe, who said, nicely done with the Shack user switching. This seems perhaps better or similar to the login as user extension. Yes, I think there are one or two other versions of Shack user switching available on the JED. We couldn't get either of them. I think we tested two to work properly. Hence, we ended up releasing our own. And so Shack Error Notify is the fourth of the extensions that we've released in this pandemic time. And the fifth and last one I'm going to introduce today is called Shack Article Layouts. And this is one that we're going to introduce into all of our templates, particularly when it comes to Joomla 4. We found that a lot of people were having problems getting an interesting blog or magazine layout without installing a big, heavy page builder or something that would be too complicated. And so Bill talked earlier about trying to focus on simplicity with our extensions. And so what we have available here is basically a sophisticated module which allows you to pick and choose articles and show them in a variety of different formats, from a magazine format to a magazine format with full-size images that cover the text and the title, to clearly defined blocks, to a full width layout, and then the default we saw at the beginning there. And this Shack article layout is, again, an extension that we hope is pretty easy to use. You can choose categories. You can filter your articles as to whether they're featured or not. You can choose their ordering. You can choose the number of articles. You can choose the layout and the number of columns in here. And there's a bunch of additional display options. You can choose how much of the content to show. You can choose where to pull the images from. You can choose to show the date and the author. Some fairly typical and straightforward Joomla settings there. And we've used it in this example here to show a blog. And this particular blog happens to show the 5 different extensions that we've talked about today. In the admin area, we have this set to the blocks layout. In the admin area, I can change that to cover. Now, that's probably not quite the right choice here because the images are cut off. Maybe I could solve that by changing the number of columns. Okay, that looks a little better. The images maybe are a tiny bit cut off. We have the default option here. The magazine option. And the wide full width layout. And so Shack Article Manager is designed to be a simple layout manager. And in terms of taking this simplicity all the way through, we're going to put Shack Article Manager into as many of our templates as possible so that people can easily customize their front page, customize their blog layout, customize a staff portfolio, things like this, without needing to install a big, heavy page manager. Got a question from the chat about adding extra filters. Yes, I think that's probably the most common request that we got after we launched this. Wesley asks, are we going to have things such as filter by tags? Yes, that is explicitly something that I've asked for when it comes to using it on Joomlashack. We are a big believer in eating our own dog food. And the same is true with all these extensions here. We use all of these on our own site. And filtering these articles by tags is something we're working on. Filtering by date range and relative date range. I'm going to grab a pen and put that on our to-do list for the extension. Those are both great ideas. And so what you guys see in front of you is what we've done over the last 10 weeks, 11 weeks now, in terms of putting out new extensions and new tools that we hope will be useful to you. Most of them were not exactly long-term plans that we've been working on for years. It's more of a hopefully a fast-moving response to the pandemic, trying to think of things that we use every day and find to be incredibly useful. And now that we've released them and made them available to Joomlashack customers, we hope you guys will find them useful as well. Cool. So I'm going to turn it over to questions if you guys have any. Another one from Bjorn about the filters. In Shack article adds the number of articles. I only have 5 articles in the system. We have 12 there. If we added more articles, then they would automatically appear. So this number here is essentially unlimited.